welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com and grab some CPE while you're there.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
It is a happy Friday, right? So, welcome everyone to episode number 110. 110 of the Friday Fraudster. You know, I didn't think we would make it past 10, but apparently we did.
Good job. 100 past 10. And, you know, I was remembering, I think it was on episode 100. So 10 episodes later, I'm back.
I can't believe my little baby is all grown up now. So, we have Carol is here, and so is Leslie. Leslie, I hadn't seen you in a while. I hope all is well. So listen, have you guys ever had a company credit card before?
Yes.
I think I had one way back when I was with Ernst & Young, and I have actively avoided having one since. Like, I think I'd rather just have my own and do the reimbursement than deal with a P card or a corporate card.
Yeah, I can see some of the benefits of them, but then again, I can see where they could be abused too.
Right.
What about you, Christine?
The policies are tight.
You better hope the policies are tight. You know, and I think in one episode, I told the story about how I made a mistake and purchased a large Chick-fil-A fry on my corporate card. And as soon as I did it, I went and reimbursed. As soon as I did it, because I recognized, I was like, oh, crap, that was the wrong card. But I had to have those Chick-fil-A fries. You know, I think a lot of companies are using purchasing cards because they do have some advantages, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to Christine's point, you've got to put controls in place, and there are a lot of there's a lot of software and controls you can put in place. Doesn't sound like they did that in this case that we're going to talk about today.
Boy, it doesn't. And you know, the controls are pretty good nowadays. So I'll tell you guys a story. So one time I went, well, a few times I've been overseas, but this one time I was overseas, and was I in Portugal? I can't remember where I was now. And I remember I was charging stuff on my personal credit card, and I get back to the States, and I get this call from the credit card company, and they say, Mr. Berry, are you still in Europe? And I'm like, well, you just called me and I just answered. So no, obviously I'm not still in Europe. Now, this is before we had WhatsApp and all that good stuff. And, you know, calls were just calls. And I said, well, no, I'm at home. So obviously I'm not still in Europe. And they said, oh, okay. So you didn't go to ABC store and buy CDE, and someone had gone to a women's store and purchased some women's clothing. And I'm like, no, it's not like an episode of Mr. Mom here. No, I didn't. Wasn't me. I don't have.
We're not judging, Robert. We're not judging.
That's true.
I'm just saying. So I was like, well, no, it wasn't me. And then they said, well, you didn't go to this restaurant and rack up $400 worth of food. And I'm thinking,
Ooh.
I don't know anybody I want to spend $400 worth of food on in one night. So it was fraudulent, obviously. And they used some sort of data analytics way back in the day to detect this fraudulent transaction. So I'm just wondering, what could happen nowadays that could prevent an organization from actually catching fraudulent transactions? What do you think? Like, what could actually stop them from catching these fraudulent transactions?
Stop them from catching them? So allowing them to happen?
Yeah.
I mean, not having the controls in place.
Well, I guess in my opinion, I think it all depends. Like if there's certain vendors or anything else that those corporate cards should only be used for, is there a way you could cut off other vendors? Like, should they not be going to restaurants and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
But even them, at that point, you're at the mercy of whoever your card vendor is.
I guess that could help. What about, do you think if you fired the CFO and then put in somebody else that reported to you and then kind of bullied them and told them, you do as I say, would that help you to
Hopefully they would not take that, but
right.
That would probably help you to commit fraud. Now Hal is saying that our show is 770 years old in dog years. And no, Hal, I am not coming clean. This is so all right. Let me stop beating around the bush and let's just get straight to it today. Wait a minute, before I get into the story. Anybody been to Miami recently?
Mm-mm.
You
nope.
haven't? Oh, I think it's a great place to be. I think it's really hot in Miami.
It's hot and it's really far away from me.
So hot, I think that there are a lot of stolen items in Miami.
It's a lot of hot items. Yeah.
All right. So today, what we're talking about is an investigative report that has been released that alleged misuse of taxpayer funds by a former city administrator in North Miami Beach. The report cited massive misspending of funds on Amazon purchases and other things, to name a few. Now, are you guys familiar with this case? I know you are, Christine and Elizabeth.
Oh,
Well, I am now because you sent it to me, but I had not heard of it before that. But I did download they have an Excel extract of all the charges. So I was doing some pivot tables, poking around in those, and it's wild what people charged. And it's a lot. It seems like, I'm not positive how many people, but it wasn't just one person. Like,
it was not just one person. Now, oh, wait a minute. I just lost my place. Hold on one second. I do that a lot, you know. It's hard to keep up with everything while managing the show. But here's what happened. The city manager was hired for a 4-year term in April of 2021. Now, shortly after he was hired, some folks in the finance group, mainly the CFO and someone else, they quit. And some other people came on board, but it's alleged that the newer people that came on board were people who were not as seasoned and experienced and would do whatever he told them to do. And oftentimes he told them, allegedly, he told them to forego proper controls and to just approve certain expenses as they came through. He also told them to ignore certain things that went in line with the rules that were in place. So certain expenditures over certain dollar amounts should not have occurred, but he said, do it anyway. So it's alleged that he had an environment that was full of fear and bullying. So even with controls in place, it sounds like he did a good job of trying to circumvent those controls. Now, I'm going to read you one thing that came out of an investigation, because they hired an attorney to actually investigate the activity. The attorney interviewed what he calls whistleblowers, because these people came forward to tell their story. And one person said, and I quote, "After the former city manager was hired, there was an explosion of P-card assignment increased and sometimes excessive usage of city-issued cards by the city manager, senior staff, and city commissioners, including but not limited to making donations, paying bar association memberships, and using food trucks for quasi-political events.
I know I pulled up the 18-page report, and of course I try to find these people, and what was it? It was how much was used for books and subscriptions.
Oh boy.
So how many people was it, did you say? Or do you know?
I think I read somewhere that there were about 27, but I can't find it right now.
So many people, like, for collusion to not stand up to this person. Gosh, that's a lot of people.
That is a defunct culture right there.
Ding ding. There you go.
And it, I don't know, because like I was saying, I was looking at, I go onto LinkedIn and everything else. I'm like, how do you spend $43,000 on subscriptions and books between 20 people, right?
Right.
Well, one of the people that they specifically pointed out, she's published 2 books.
There you go.
Devil's advocate there.
I was wondering if one of you was going to mention that. So yeah, so we had a lot of Amazon purchases, and when you're looking at credit card transactions, so here's a quick tip for auditors. If you're just looking at the base credit card transactions, it's just going to say Amazon and it's going to say bookstore, but we know Amazon sells everything. You have to get the level 3 credit card data, which allows you to drill down and see exactly what was purchased. But yes, one of the people involved is a published author. So now, whether they use the purchasing card to buy her books or not, I'm not sure because, well, we didn't get level 3 data, obviously, but that was one of the things that I saw, and that was a speculation. So let's run down part of the list, though. There were a total of, now get this, 10,138 transactions, totaling $1,989,265.01. Thus far, though, they're saying that $1,382,000 violate P card policy, common sense, and applicable local, county, and state statutes. The most egregious, though, food purchases totaling $70,000. Charitable contributions, totaling $86,000. Retail stores totaling, it just says retail stores, so we don't know if there was a Louis Vuitton teddy bear in this one, though, right? Retail stores totaling $185,000, and Amazon purchases totaling $296,000, which includes books, music, personal items, etc. Now, here's the big one. Random number and hardware purchases totaling, and this is for computer equipment, $358,000.
It's a lot of computer stuff. I wonder how many of those were MacBooks or something.
Oh, they had to be MacBooks. You know, people love stealing Macs and iPhones.
There's a lot of Walmart transactions and CVS, because you were talking about for the retail stores. I was just looking at what the actual vendors, some that look like they might be inappropriate that I won't read out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I miss where this spreadsheet was?
What's that?
Did I miss where this spreadsheet was?
It was linked in one of the articles that I found, but yeah, you can download the entire detail of, so I and they've got it broken out by category. The wildest one, and that was mentioned in the article too, was welfare and child support. Somebody charged child support to their P card. Like I wouldn't even think you could use a credit card for that. I'm not sure that you should be able to use a credit card for that.
I don't know.
But it gets even better.
I was gonna say, what about the construction and lumber supplies?
Yeah, that was number 2 for the categories, right?
You could have built a house with that.
I think there may be some additions to the houses down there. Well, in Miami, you can't build a house for that amount, right? In Miami, your average home is about $400,000 to $500,000, right? But especially where they are, North Miami Beach. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. So this gets political too, because with the city council, they had some issues with the city manager, and there were also some petitions to try and give the city council authority to vote without having a quorum. So without having the agreed upon number of people present. Now, the mayor in this particular city at this point was, and I don't know if he still is, but he was suspended. So Governor Ron DeSantis suspended the mayor because there were things going on with the mayor as well. So this entire governmental structure sounds like it is extremely interesting. But I don't know if you guys remember, there was an episode of my podcast Audit Bites that I did where I talked about the mayor in Fort Lauderdale who said that they terminated the chief audit executive for the city of Fort Lauderdale, which is a little bit north of Miami, about an hour and a half north, maybe an hour. They terminated the chief auditor, and the mayor said that the auditors work on behalf of the city council, not the stakeholders, not the citizens, but the city council. And he also said, in that case, somebody came forward as a whistleblower and started telling about some of the wrongdoings that were happening. The mayor called that person a coward. So it sounds like that general area has some governance issues.
I would agree.
Yeah, they just seem like they've got a lot of problems.
Okay.
Even outside of this.
Yeah. Tell me what you all think about this. So the attorney that they hired to do the investigation, he interviewed the chief financial officer. And here's what she had to say. According to the CFO, she was systematically bullied and pushed to the side in order to prevent proper oversight and accounting practices in the area of expenditure of taxpayer funds. In addition, the former city manager strategically placed his own staff in positions from finance director to accountant to even the position of cashier in order to control the city's finances and limit the oversight. Now, the position of CFO was created in 2019. But then shortly after the city manager who's alleged of doing the credit card fraud joined, she quit. She quit. What do you think about that?
I'm just wondering who do you go to? If you're in a position like the CFO, I mean, obviously I would assume she quit because of all of this. Does she have an obligation to whistleblow? But if so, to whom in that sort of government structure? But yeah.
I think that happens with a lot of people though too, Elizabeth. I mean, you gotta sit here and think a lot of people, this is their job. They have to work in order to make rents pay. Are you gonna pay rent or everything else? And I know people are like, well, CFO, whatever. Government employees don't really make a whole lot compared to the private sector. But I mean, it's like, you should. I hopefully would. But would you put your job on the line? And I think that's what holds a lot of people back and why a lot of this stuff goes on for so long.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah. But, and it's a good question that you ask. Should you put your job on the line? I'll ask the broader question. What's at stake if you don't put your job on the line? you know, you, if you are a person with a little bit of integrity, you have to be just inside, you have to be boiling up in turmoil and chaos. Your mind has to be flipping from one side to the other, and you just feel horrible. If you have any sort of morals, ethics, or values, it has to eat you up and bother you when you see something and you're still going into that same environment. Um, you know what? Here's a lesson for internal auditors, though. So I actually talked about this. Whenever someone leaves an organization, I am of the opinion that internal auditors should do what I call assess the aftermath, meaning when someone leaves, find out why they left, what happened, what caused it to leave, what caused them to leave. And this is how strongly I feel this. If you look here, this was episode number 1 of my podcast, Audit Bites. As you can see, the date was August 13th of 2021. Auditors must assess the aftermath. When someone in a significant position of authority leaves an organization, you should be trying to figure out why, especially if them leaving is abrupt. We don't currently do that.
It's really interesting because I left my job about a year ago at a pretty large financial institution. I was the chief auditor, and the audit committee did not meet with me in private, did not ask why. And I actually kept waiting. I was like, surely they're going to ask. You have to ask why, are you leaving? And I had a lot of things I could have said and I would have said, because I try to, live truthfully. I wasn't just going to blow things up for fun, but I would have been truthful. Never asked. Nobody. I filled out the little HR survey. It didn't raise any flags that warranted them asking me anything additional. And I just left, and I was flabbergasted.
Yeah. I strongly believe that from a governance standpoint, that is an extreme weakness, an internal control weakness in organizations that don't do it. And most organizations don't do it. Now, for those of you on LinkedIn, I just dropped a link to that podcast episode. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it on Spotify, Stitcher. Stitcher's closed now. It's no longer a thing. Apple, the Google Music Store, anywhere your podcasts are. But seriously, and Bob Wessler hits the point. They didn't want to know. And then so I think it falls into a few different categories. Sometimes people don't want to know. Sometimes they don't care. And sometimes under the veil of ignorance, they don't know what they don't know.
Or if they don't know, then they can't care. And so it's just easier to look the other way, hold your nose and pretend. But yeah, absolutely. They didn't want to know. And in a lot of ways, that probably demonstrates a lot of what I had issues with, because they often didn't want to hear the hard answers. And that was how I viewed my job as an auditor, was to give the hard answers. But yeah, they don't want to hear the unfavorable stuff. And that's usually what's going to come out, especially in exit interviews. But I think that, to your point, at a certain level of employee or leader or management or executive, you've got to be having those conversations. But I think a lot of people are worried about blowback too, that maybe there just isn't much that comes out of it. So
well, it's also what you do with that information too. I mean, I've had plenty of those exit meetings, and I've been honest and truthful when it came to HR with my boss or whatever. But where does it go from there?
Right.
So if you have that internal audit capability, you do that HR audit, explore that. If your HR department is getting that plethora of information on how things are operating, where does that get reported up to? Is it just sitting on a spreadsheet somewhere and nobody is aware of it, and there's not anybody addressing what could be causing you losing good people?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Hal says, if you, as the CAE, aren't aware of what's going on, even if it is just suspicion, when a high-profile person leaves, that makes me question how well plugged in you are in your organization and its culture.
And if everybody is shocked by it.
Oh boy, it's a good
So
point.
it's not just like senior leaders going, oh my gosh, and then you have everybody at their level or lower going, no, we knew this was coming.
So now,
culture shock from everybody, that would actually be a red flag for me for potential fraud though too.
So now let me tell you all what the accounts payable supervisor, who had been employed there for over 20 years and was in charge or is in charge of paying invoices and reviewing credit card expenditures, what she said. She said that she advised that there had been multiple incidents of misconduct over the past 2 years since the city manager came. Now, she worked under the finance director, and the finance director told her to, quote unquote, stay in her corner and to, quote, mind her own business.
Stay in your lane.
Oh.
Yep. Stay in your lane.
That's one of the biggest red flags, I think, is when they are actively trying to get you to look over there and not at what they're doing.
Yep.
I'm wondering how many people, if they work for companies, or Elizabeth and Rob, I mean, I know you guys were, how many of you guys worked on relationships from an internal audit perspective with other departments? Like, it's not, because I know auditors can be scary, or at least that's what people usually say, but you developed that personal relationship throughout other departments and areas. Because I know I've done it where I've sat there and said, hey, if you ever have any concerns and you don't know who to go to, you are more than welcome to come knock on my door, and I won't say who said it.
Right. I definitely worked really hard at that type of relationship, and I had people come to me at certain times, and that's really rewarding, I would say. But then you reach a certain point, or at least I did, where the people above me, the executives, were still super resistant to hearing what I had to say. And then, you know, you can't take everything to the audit committee. At a certain point, you've got to just kind of what you can. And so that's when it gets frustrating, because you are trying to do the right thing and you're trying to encourage people to speak up. But when we get cut off too, it's really difficult.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I'll call this a tale of two cultures. I worked in two different organizations, one where, oh my goodness, one of the best places I've ever worked. Still talk to some of the people that are there to this day. They would frequently come to us as a department. Now, I was the director of audit, but I say us because they trusted me as well as the team. They would constantly come to us and ask us to help out with things. We felt truly embedded in, you know, the process, the success of the organization. So I know what that feels like, whether it was a director level, you know, a staff level, or even the executive level. They were very supportive. And I think part of it was they trusted me as an individual. They trusted the department as a whole, but also they had a certain level of maturity. Just because we're adults doesn't mean that we're mature. Now, I'll contrast that with the second culture that I worked in, where people in the departments would come to us all the time. We would partner on engagements and stuff. But then when we took things up the chain, similar to your situation, Elizabeth, the executive level didn't like it, didn't trust it. It got so bad one time, we did an investigation where the people in the department handed us everything, all of the evidence that we needed, because they were so fed up. We then went to the executive team and said, listen, here's what's happening. And they said, how do you know? I said, well, there's evidence. They said, we don't trust your evidence. I said, well, great. It's not my evidence. The people working in the department gave it directly to us. They then, and you know, I was being a smart ass too, because they were, but then they asked, can you tell us who gave it to you? And I said, no, I cannot do that, so that you can retaliate against them, because I knew exactly what that was. So it's very important to understand and gauge the culture in an organization, because the culture is going to affect how well you can do your job. You can be the best auditor in the world, but if the culture is corrupt, you will not be able to succeed.
And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn just personally.
Same here.
Because I think that you and I have some similar experiences in our past, because we've talked about it, but you're getting paid to do a job that you are absolutely fantastic at. And then they're upset because you're that good and bringing these things to their attention. It's like, no, we didn't really want you to find those things. Like, we didn't really want to hear about it, know about it. But especially for people like us, we so strongly believe in what we do and doing the right thing that it's really hard. It's a hard pill to swallow when you're just kind of blocked at every turn, or you're penalized for doing your job great and awesomely. I don't think that's a word.
Passion. I always call it passion, Elizabeth. We have a lot of passion for what we do.
We do.
And I think sometimes we want to pull our hair out because it's like, I don't think you understand. We're here to help. We want you to do better. We want you to be great.
Right.
We're part of this organization.
Yeah.
If I didn't care, I'd sit back and collect a paycheck.
It's all about you caring. That's exactly right. Because if you didn't, then you'd be like, whatever. Yeah.
But here's the big thing. Here's the big thing. Why would you want to see the organization that you work for and helps you provide a livelihood fail? Why would you want to see that organization fail? And so when you put that into perspective, why would an auditor actually want to see the organization fail? Why would you not be trying to help? Now, Hal brings up a really good point. He says being right doesn't mean you can do the job in the right way, sadly. And I always say, and I say something similar to people. I say, just because you are right in whatever it is you're saying or doing doesn't mean the situation is going to turn out right. Because oftentimes we see the person who is right as the one who gets persecuted in today's environment. And that's sad, but that's oftentimes what we see happen. Okay. So wait. Let's get back to the story for just one moment because something else happened. So this city manager who was under investigation, he is actually now suing the city. And a part of his lawsuit is he's claiming that the attorney that did the investigation has a conflict of interest and an appearance of impropriety because he was the criminal defense attorney for the mayor or the former mayor of the city. So now you see all the
so intertwined. I can't even, because I saw that. It's just like I can't even process it.
Was that for DeFilippo?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we need to have one conversation first. Though he needs to start showing up for work. It's pretty bad before all this came out that a judge told you have to start coming to work and coming to meetings.
Wait, told DeFilippo that, the lawyer? I missed that one.
No, he ended up telling DeFilippo and Michael Joseph. They both went in front of a judge. Yep. And then Daniela Jean, she actually had two of her coworkers. She ended up doing this like women's retreat, women in leadership sort of a thing. And there were people that she worked with that refused to go because they were calling her out and saying, you can't be a leader if you're not showing up to 90% of our votes that we're supposed to be doing.
Whoa. Wait, how did I miss that part?
I dug not as deep as Elizabeth because I did not find this spreadsheet that I'm just like, oh my gosh, that looks so awesome to just dissect. But
the funny thing is, I couldn't find the report. I found the spreadsheet, but I couldn't find the full report.
I got the report and the spreadsheet.
Well, yeah. You have it all.
Well, I didn't get them until, so I was telling Christine last week. So I'll have the stories and I'll send them to you all. But then about 30 to 45 minutes before the show, I do a little extra digging. And then that's when I start finding like, oh, wow, this is insane. Now, listen, Ruth says something quite interesting. She says, in my part of the world, internal auditors are often hired simply to meet regulatory requirements, not necessarily to do what is required of them. Wow.
It's very true. It just, I hate it.
Wow.
And I used to do that. I was an internal auditor. I ran our own internal audits along with some of our regulatory ones. And then I was charged with being the main communication with the regulators. I would assist. I was that in-between person between the regulators and, senior management. But I liked how that worked because it also made my job a lot easier the rest of the year when I'd come around and audit the organization. But just to facilitate external audits, it would be an easy job. I think it would be
boring.
Yeah. I shouldn't say that. I should say, I think I would feel kind of helpless. Because then now I'm not sitting here and going, oh, well, maybe you should put this in the report. Or you're just kind of in that stand back.
You're not really charged or empowered to try and make anything better. You're just supposed to be babysitting, basically, and pushing the paper around.
Now think about this. We have a city government that has attempted to put controls in place over spending by having purchasing cards. But then we have a person who allegedly has come in and been able to circumvent all controls by hiring people that he wants under him, allegedly, by controlling those people and controlling transactions and the approval process within transactions to the tune of almost $2 million in about a 2-year time period. That's a very short period of time. That's crazy. But wait, while we're here at this point, let's pause for just one moment. I want to ask you, if you're listening to this and you enjoy it, go over to the Apple Store, go over to Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. If you're on LinkedIn, hey, write a review on my profile, but go over to the Apple Podcast Store. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review because I think that we're worth it. Here's the other thing I want to tell you. Auditors, we need training, right? We need training on a lot of things because we have a large responsibility and small budgets. Well, if you want training by one of the best, and yes, I'm talking about myself, give me a call. I have a catalog of over 30 courses, primarily surrounding like soft skills, but even some hard skills. One of my newest courses, Artificial Intelligence for the Internal Auditors, it's a hit. I really like it, and so do a lot of other people. So if you need a kick butt audit trainer, go to my website, thatauditguy.com. Send me a message. By the way, sign up for my newsletter because I have some surprises coming real soon. A lot of surprises coming. So go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. Elizabeth, what are you up to, my friend?
Well, I happen to know another really awesome presenter and trainer, and you can learn all about her at auditforward.com. Yes, I'm talking about me, but I run an internal audit consulting and training company called Audit Forward. Follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn because I try to put out a lot of really great content and try to connect with a lot of people.
Now, right now, aren't you specializing in credit unions?
Specializing in credit unions, I think there is just so much opportunity in that space. I think that a lot of them are often behind the times, if you will, in terms of technology. They're not really using it. They're not auditing smart, or they can audit smarter, not harder, which is my slogan. And I think there's just so much opportunity for everyone in that space to do things better. And I'm going to give a plug too, especially if anyone is local to Denver. The Fraud Retreat is next Thursday and Friday, and I think there's still a couple of spots if anyone wants to sign up. Rob's going to be there. I'm going to be there. A lot of people are going to be there. It's going to be fun.
And I must say, the Fraud Retreat, this is not a how-to. We're not telling you how to commit fraud.
Well, actually, Roger, so we have a Teams chat with all of the people who are coming. And I was like, hello.
Wait a minute, why am I not on a Teams chat?
I don't know, but I was like, hello, fabulous fraudsters. And then a few minutes later, I'm like, that's not what I meant. I meant fraud fighters.
Oh, my goodness.
Add Robert to that chat now.
Now, you know what? Joe actually sent me the link for it, and it wouldn't let me on a couple of times when I tried, and it was probably me, probably my VPN or something, and I said I was going to go back to it and sign in, and I just hadn't done it yet because, life.
I understand.
Oh, now wait a minute. I'm trying to see if there's anything in this story that we left out. But think about this now. We got a city manager that's accused of, well, purchasing card theft. We have a city mayor who has been suspended. We have an environment where there are accusations of bullying. We had a CFO that quit shortly after the new city manager came in. We actually had controls surrounding the purchasing cart because the accounts payable clerk that they interviewed talked about the control environment and the things that were in place. But she also talked about how they were circumvented when she was told to stay in her lane and just do it.
Mm-hmm. It's just crazy. I mean, this kind of stuff is never going to stop.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Well, people, determined fraudsters,
Mm-hmm.
we're constantly trying to catch up because they're always thinking of a new way to get around the controls and to commit the fraud. And it can be exhausting sometimes just trying to keep up.
Yeah, but I think this one was if I'm going to try to say this and not be extremely harsh, but I think this one was partially due to some negligence and some ignorance, and some just I don't want to know, because if they had listened to that accounts payable clerk and then one other person, they actually said the first thing they saw was a substantial increase in purchasing card activity. That's your first red flag.
Right.
Well, and that's what I keep going back to is how did that many people justify it to themselves? It's one thing to just be quiet and not say anything and want to keep your job. Mm-hmm. It's another to actively use this card that you've been given in a fraudulent and probably illegal way. That's not just standing on the sidelines. And that's what I have difficulty wrapping my head around. I mean, this is just one or two people. This was
my friend,
massive group.
That goes back to culture. And if you hear, we talk about culture a lot. And I think I said last week or the week before last, I can't remember now because age, but Richard Chambers and Cynthia Cooper, they've come out with this new white paper. Well, it's more than a white paper on culture, how to audit culture, where to get started. Every internal audit department should have some sort of a culture assessment that they've done. I don't care how good your controls are. If your culture is corrupt, then those controls can be circumvented. And that is what we're seeing here, because when I read the controls, the way that accounts payable clerk listed them out, I was like, oh, so you had a process for this, you had a process for that, but you were told to stay in your lane. That speaks to the power of culture.
Well, and maybe as part of that, I guess I hope that a lot of these 20 plus people didn't even realize maybe that they were doing things wrong. Maybe they come in, they're new or naive or whatever it is. And sure, it's okay if you charge lunch every day on your card. That's accepted. I kind of hope there was more of that ignorance, flat out, just fraud, but I don't know.
But then it's also one of those things, we go back to your policies. So I totally agree with that. My question on this was ownership, your governance and your oversight. So was it, who was approving the cards? Was it just going directly to AP? Because you know what, you need an additional control there. AP isn't going to know if Jane or Joe is supposed to be expensing that. Their job is to process the payments.
Yep.
Make sure that your policies are clear, concise. Make sure they establish the rules. Make sure they outline the expectations. If you don't do it, this is what's going to happen. And the best thing that anybody could ever do, and I wish organizations would do this more often, test your policies against yourself before somebody else does it.
Right. Well, and so yes, self audits basically, but also I would say from the employee side, Make sure that people are reading the handbook and the policies annually. And even when you said test, this is what made me think of it. Take a test, because most people just check the box and then say, "Yep, I read it." And I was the one who always sat there and read every page of the handbook. I wanted to know what would change.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate here because they documented a lot of things that went against policy. So I'm going to go back to culture is the culprit, because I think even in some environments, let me just back up. How many times have we written up organizations for not having written policies and procedures, even when we've audited and things turned out pretty much okay? Reasonably, things were well controlled, but they didn't have policies and procedures. And so because of that, we put that in our report as the one thing that we wrote up. So here they did a lot of things that went against policy. There were purchases that were against the guidelines for hiring contractors. There were things for purchases made over $1,000 that they didn't do anything about, even though there was a policy in place, because the city manager told them to stay in their lane. And to your point, Christine, about the governance, you can't have good governance in an environment where people are allowed to circumvent controls, because they don't want to set up a good governance process, which is why auditors should look at culture and governance. It is just, I'll give you a good example. I worked for an organization once. I stepped in the first day. I said, well, hey, where is my budget? Because I want to be held accountable for everything. I was over an audit department. They told me that no one in the organization had a budget. I was like, what the heck? How is this even? No one. There were no budgets. And this was a $1 billion operation. No one had budgets. I said, well, how do you hold people accountable for their spending? And they said, well, we just let them spend. And sometimes at the end of the year, there's a surplus. And sometimes we pull money from one of our reserve accounts and cover it. In that moment, I knew that I was in for some trouble.
If that's how they're running things, yeah, that's it's not going to go well.
Well, and even Elizabeth is sitting here going, man, if the credit unions were doing that, like, whoo. But, with the rate environment and all your asset liability management risk and stuff like that, I mean, the way that mortgage rates are right now, it's like, man, we really got to cut back on our spending because we're not making money on mortgages.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Hal just hit it. Root cause. People don't give a you-know-what if leadership doesn't give a you-know-what. Yeah, exactly. I'll dig a little further on this. I'll give a few more examples. I remember, so I started in banking in the late 90s. And I remember one bank I worked for, I was an auditor. We caught someone stealing. They were stealing because they were applying payments to their own account that should have been going to customer accounts.
Oh, gosh.
Now, as soon, yeah, isn't it crazy? But as soon as we turned over the evidence, let me tell you what they did now. I remember I was walking in one morning and it was about 8:03. And at about 8:05, the police came in, went over to the cashiering area, told the young lady to stand up, put the handcuffs on her, and marched her right out. Now, upon seeing that, what do you think might happen to the other employees who may even be thinking about stealing from that organization? They're not going to do it.
Well, right away, I'm like, how did your computer system not prevent somebody from doing transactions on their own account? But it was in the 90s.
I was going to say,
online banking yet. So
yeah. Now,
we were
fast
physically
forward.
sending checks into the Fed. So
exactly, and that's what it was. She also washed the check too, though. She removed the pay to the order of name from it, so she did check washing. Now, fast forward though to another company that I worked for, where you had someone who caused the organization to lose over $1 million because of something that they had done, and I won't get into too many explicit details. We found it, reported it, ran it up the line to the CFO, CEO, and everyone. This person was allowed to retire and keep their pension. So what do you think happened to the environment there and the culture and the mindset of the people there? Matter of fact, people came up to me and said, how could they just let him retire after doing all of this? That doesn't make any sense.
You want to be honest? It's the good old boys club.
That or laziness, just go away. I
don't want to fire that person. That's a reputation risk, especially if it's in a small town at a financial institution. We're not going to sit here and say that we made a mistake in hiring somebody. We're just going to let them quietly walk out.
Yep.
And nobody will know.
And that mentality is crazy. It is counterproductive. It's easier to say, oops, I made a mistake, or oops, we made a mistake, or, our controls weren't tight enough to prevent this person from stealing from us. We'll do better next time. We'll try to do better next time, but yeah, it's, so anyway,
I'll say Kelly outlines that in her book about people not wanting to admit that somebody stole from them. So the person just goes on to the next company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kelly talks about that all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh boy. Ruth says, I can up you. What if they weren't even reprimanded? Wait, you mean they stayed at the company after being caught? Wait a minute. Hold on. I want to hear what Ruth says about this. So do you mean, Ruth, that they actually were allowed to stay at the company after being caught doing something? I get you saying they weren't reprimanded, but were they actually allowed to stay there too? I'm curious to know.
And what did they do?
Yeah, what did they do that should have drawn some sort of reprimand? See, this is why I like stuff like this, because we get to talk as auditors. Oh, she said yes.
Ruth was the one that said that internal auditors are just hired because they have to, not, to actually do their job.
Okay, so you know what? I got a spoiler for everybody. Let me go ahead and talk about one of the surprises that I have coming up. I'm gonna go ahead and, because I like conversations like this. So if you are an auditor and you want to join a community of other auditors where we can have open discussions like this, even outside of a podcast and in a semi-private environment, go to community.thatauditguy.com. Join my community. I'm building it up. I've been neglecting the community lately because I've been a little sick and a whole lot busy. But here's what we're going to do. At least once a month, my goal is really twice, but at least once a month, we're going to get together on Zoom calls and we're going to talk. We'll choose the subject beforehand and we're just going to have open discussions. If you have an issue that you're trying to deal with, come and let's all talk together. So that's one of my surprises coming up. I got a few more, though, over the next couple of weeks.
Sounds awesome.
Nice.
Anyway, so that's the story. Purchasing card fraud is running rampant in North Miami. People are getting sued. Government officials are doing some crazy stuff, allegedly. Elizabeth, Christine, anything else you guys want to add to the story?
No. It was a good one.
Anything
it was so
recent.
It was just so recent that I think we were trying, that was the only article I could find when you first sent it. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Lots of layers too.
Yeah.
It's an onion, that's for sure.
It's an onion. I was going to say croissant, but whatever.
Oh,
makes you want to try.
Message Robert if you want to be on the podcast. You got to say that again, Robert.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So yeah, so you guys, this is our podcast. Joe has a full-time job now, so she abandoned me and I miss her dearly. And Kelly is taking a break for the summer and she might be back every once in a while, but we're rotating co-host. So if you want to be a co-host, message me, because as you can see, we have a few people rolling in and out. You know what? Next week, we're going to have a very special guest and he knows who he is. And he was supposed to be a special guest this week. We'll have to give him a hard time because he had to cancel at the last minute. But it's a very special guest that
I got the call last minute, so I'm the pinch hitter.
No. He actually canceled on me Monday. You were on my mind anyway. I just been so busy. You're one of my guest hosts too. And Clarence, I'd love to have you on, my friend. I would love to have you on as a guest. But right now, if you think about it, we have Galena, Thomas, you, Elizabeth, Christine, Kelly might pop in from time to time, and Joe might pop in from time to time. And goodness, Mark Anderson, hadn't heard from him in a while, but I need to check on him and see how he's doing. So this is us just talking, having a good time.
Mhm.
So thank you for that reminder, Christine, because I forgot. Now, Marianne is one last. I'll let Marianne close this out. Think of the tone at the top, impact when a fraud perpetrator gets a slap on the hand and goes unpunished.
And it's not even, it's just the perpetual impact at another company, and they're learning the lesson that they do get away with it. Yeah, it's a huge impact.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on episode number 110, the Credit Card Caper. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
We'll see ya.